Well, do you realize that we are a month into our autumn season, right? Just about a month. And of course, here in San Diego, it's not quite as spectacular as it is in some of the other places in the country and in the world. But I have been noticing that the evenings have been a little cooler. So we have a little subtlety here, a little nuance about our change in season. And I don't know what it is. For me, I always think that the fall and the autumn is more of a time of transition than any other. And I'm not sure where that comes from, where I have that sense about it. But I do. I just have that sense about it. And I shared with you, last week about my sister's transition and things that happen in this time of year are sometimes very monumental, massive changes, and things that happen that we don't understand, that we're not in control of, that we wouldn't necessarily have asked for. And so anytime anyone passes, it's always kind of a wake-up call for all of us to say, how am I living my life today? And to think about all of the millions and millions of people, billions of people on this planet, and all of the challenges that they are going through in their own personal lives, and be it transitions, be it births. I know that we've had a challenge in our community that we were expecting a little birth, and it came out that it was a stillbirth, and that's a tough one to accept. But life is not in our control. What we teach in this teaching is that there is a power and a presence and a loving energy that is in control. We call it God. We call it that divine energy. And when we allow our bloated nothingness to get out of the way of the divine circuits, we allow ourselves to be available for this power that knows a lot more than what our finite minds know, to use us, to live through us. So I think one of our main assignments on this earth plane is to relinquish that need for control, to relinquish that wanting to have it my way. There was a song many years ago that was, "I did it my way." And you know what? All of us do. In one way, in one form or another, we do it our way. But my goodness, I'm suggesting that if we allow ourselves to step aside and wait and see what this divine, infinite energy has in mind for us, how much more fabulous it really could be. This month we're focusing on Michael Beckwith's book, Spiritual Liberation, and today's topic is entitled The Christ Energy. And I think if we look back in history, there have been many, many mystics, of course, many people who lived their lives relinquishing their control, allowing this divine energy to live through them. And Jesus, who became the Christ, I think is probably, one of the best examples that we have of someone that did that, because he absolutely lived his life from that standpoint of his oneness with the One. When he did all the things in his life that were considered miracles, he again gave credit to the One who was doing it, the Father within doing the work, not me. He didn't have that personal ego self at all. And he stepped that aside and allowed that to come through. And how do we do that? He said these things that I can do, you can do too. How do we do that? Looking at what he did. What did he do? He went within. He prayed. He fasted. He went and allowed himself to be full from within. And it takes practice, it takes discipline, it takes patience for us to do those things. I noticed as I pulled off one of my Louise Hay sheets on my calendar this week, they had a repeat. I don't know how many of you noticed that, but I did. Because when I pulled it off, I thought, oh, they had this one last year because I had it on my refrigerator for months. Because it spoke to me so deeply. It said, patience is being at peace with the process of life. Because many times I have evaluated myself as not being very patient. Patience is being at peace with the process of life. Doesn't that give you that sense of knowing all is well, even though I can't see the shore at the end of the horizon? It's got to be there. Michael Beckwith said that being spiritually awake is the most practical way to live. It is then that we may live as Jesus did, by not worrying about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air, for they neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, yet their heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not more valuable than they? Jesus the Christ also told us to seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. So I think that if we can remind ourselves time and time again that my first identity is spiritual, unlimited, infinite. It is not this physical self. There is a power within me, unseen, but boy, is it felt. Unseen, but it shows itself up through all of the activities, through all the relations, through all the people that I encounter when I allow it, when I allow myself to see it. I ran into flipping through a Unity magazine. It's kind of funny because when I went to the Anton conference, by the way, I haven't shared with you the Anton conference, have I? I was gone, I came back, I was at Unity Village, and they had this beautiful magazine, Unity Magazine. And when you're at the conference, they give you, a copy of it. It's a really big magazine, real big thing. And it was funny because when I was getting ready to leave, I had this bag that I had from the conference before. And I emptied it all out of everything so that I could fill it with the stuff from this conference. Well, what I emptied it out of was this Unity magazine that I had never read. It had been sitting in that little bag for a year. And when I pulled it out, there was an article on the cover. It said by Michael Singer, an interview with Michael Singer. And I guess now I was ready to see it. Maybe last year I wouldn't have been, obviously, as I didn't clue in on it. But it's a fabulous interview, and I wanted to share with you some of the information that he had in it because it's so relative to what we're talking about today. Michael Singer, if you're not aware, is the national best-selling author of Untethered Soul and The Surrender Experiment. And I've talked about both of those books, the Surrender Experiment more recently. But he spoke of the difference between freedom for yourself and freedom from yourself. And I thought, what does that mean, freedom? But he says most of us want freedom for ourselves, meaning freedom for this individual personality, and I want to have a better job, I want to have a better relationship. I want to live in XYZ place or whatever the case may be. And when I get all of those things, I'll be happy. I'll be free. I'll be content. But what he says is that all those attempts of changing things on the outside, it's like moving the chairs on the Titanic. It makes no difference. It's what's coming from within. So he talks about freedom from yourself with a capital S. On the other hand, starts when you think something's wrong, and I'm trying to compensate for it with something outside myself, i.e., awareness. Why don't I fix what's wrong inside instead? Freedom from yourself always leads to something beautiful, while freedom for yourself leads to addiction. You have to keep doing more and more, and you're never satisfied. Something to think about. Freedom from yourself. And he says, now granted, because we're having a human experience, this spiritual being that we're having a human experience, there's always going to be things that come up that we are going to assess as likes or dislikes. I mean, right away. That's part of the human nature. I like that, I don't like that. We're not going to stop that in any way whatsoever. But his formula for coming from yourself, once you catch yourself, once you know, I don't like that. Recognize that that's what's happening, number one. But he has this assessment to help yourself know when you're coming from it, when you're coming from this, getting into the, what I'm talking about, getting into the drama, getting into the stuff. It's a very simple process. He says, relax, release, repeat. Relax, release, repeat it if needed. Wouldn't it be nice if nothing was ever wrong? He stated in the article, as these lower energies come up to your higher consciousness, they're transmuted into something positive. What was anxiety now becomes peace. What was anger can become love. Christ was the perfect example of this. Look what he went through while remaining at peace. The essence of his teachings is acceptance, non-resistance, and non-judgment. Acceptance, non-resistance, and non-judgment. And how do we go through life? Not accepting, resisting, judging. Catch yourself on that. Judgment and assumptions. Judgment and gosh, why am I having such a hard time saying that word? Assumptions, thank you, assumptions create a really hectic place in life, don't they? What is the 4 agreements? Wasn't that one of them? Don't make assumptions. And that's one of my biggest ones too, because I know what's going on here, right? Well, it reminds me of a story. Billy Graham was returning to Charlotte after a speaking engagement, and when his plane arrived at the airport, there was a limousine there, to transport him to his home. And as he prepared to get in the limo, he stopped and he spoke to the driver, and he said, I've just turned 90 years old, and I have never driven a limousine. Would you mind if I drove it for a while? And the driver said, no problem, have at it. So Billy gets into the driver's seat, and they head off down the highway. A short distance away sat a rookie state trooper operating for his first speed trap. The long black limo went by him at 70 in a 55-mile-an-hour zone. The trooper pulled out and easily caught the limo, and he got out of his patrol car to begin the procedure. The young trooper walked up to the driver's door, and when the glass was rolled down, he was surprised to see who was driving. He immediately excused himself and went back to his car and called his supervisor. He told the supervisor, "I know we're supposed to enforce the law, but I also know that important people are given certain courtesies. I need to know what I should do because I have stopped a very important person." The supervisor said, "Well, who is it, the governor?" And the trooper said, No, he's more important than that." The supervisor said, "Well, is it the president?" He said, "Oh, no, he's even more important than that." And the supervisor says, "Well, for crying out loud, son, who is it?" And the young trooper, shaking, said, "I think it's Jesus because he has Billy Graham for a chauffeur." Now, that was making an assumption, wasn't it? And that is funny. But what my mind went to, as far as having it be a teaching tool, not just to get a laugh out of it, but think about you and your vehicle that you're driving, that you're the driver for. Who is inside of you? How are you taking care of and transporting and delivering this spiritual energy that is within you? This Christ self that is within you. That's our job here, is to let this infinite Christ energy out. We have precious cargo within us. It's our job to transport it, to let it be, to have it have its experience as us. That's why it made us. It wants to experience itself as us. So we want to allow this higher self to live through us. Michael Bernard Beckwith said, "Jesus the man became Jesus the Christ by utilizing his spiritual practices of meditation, prayer, contemplation, introspection, and solitary retreats. By performing these practices, he was able to see perfect health in the physically afflicted when he told the lame to walk, commanded with withered limbs to be made whole and the blind to see. When others saw a lack of food, he saw an abundance of loaves and fishes." It takes discipline. It takes practice. It takes having a spiritual vision of what we want for our lives. It takes practicing and observing ourselves lovingly when we have those assumptions, when we have those judgments, when we have those dislikes. In one part of the article, he was talking about, Michael Singer was talking about being behind somebody in traffic, and they're going 15 miles an hour slower than the limit, and you're behind them. And that's all the things all the consternations that we do, thinking about that other person, what are they thinking anyway? How many times have I said that in traffic? What are you thinking? We're here to allow this presence to be itself through us. So I want to share with you, I want to give you an update. I have the final draft of my book now in my possession. It's been emailed to me and looks good. Timing as it is such, I was able to put a dedication in the book for my sister. So I'd rather have her here, but it's perfect timing that I have a dedication in there because she's a retired school teacher. It's about tying shoes, it's for little kids that are 3 and 4 years old. And in that dedication, I thanked Joy for being my big sister and giving her credit not blame, for my name, because she was older and her name was Joy, and so the next little girl came was Gay. Joy and Gay. And I thanked her for being my big sister. Life goes on. And there's going to be a party. There's going to be a celebration. And I've had the publisher so understanding that I will have 200 copies of this book for this book signing in November. And I remember as we were sitting in the very first class of our prosperity class that we had this last summer, and we were coming up with our desire, our intention. What did we want? What was our vision? And mine was, I am a published author. Remember that?
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
And because the book had just was in its nuances, you know, it's just it was a baby idea at that time. And a lot has happened since then. And I am grateful that I had the vision. You see, yes, there is this wonderful, beautiful spirit that lives larger than life within us. And yet, I believe that each of us has our own personal, individual take on how that infinite spirit is going to show up in our lives. Each and every day. Each and every day is a new one. I think that's part of the lesson, is to remember that this is a new life for me today. Let me bring with all of the lessons, all of the love, all of the energy that has supported me up until now, but know that I can step forward here out into the future and do something entirely different. That this life is not going to be just the same as it's always been for me. I can make it through allowing this infinite being within me to do it through me. Is that cool? Is that fun? I think that's what our lot in life is to know that this God self, which is beautiful and pure and because of my name, I live up to it. Gay. I live up to being gay, which is happy. I live up to being a happy, gay person. And I have no qualms about that whatsoever. Granted, there's things that happen. We know this, obviously. But life to me is here to be grand, to be loving, to be giving, to be healthy, to be whole, to be joyous. This life knows nothing about big. It knows nothing about little. It just knows that it is infinite, unlimited. And I know that's what we are. I want you to go out the balance of this week to show up as this divine being that you are, to chauffeur it in a grand style, and be that shining, beautiful, beaming light of love and joy that you are. Namaste.